In this video, I'm going to show you how to use trigger events when you're building out your automations. Every automation has to be triggered off by some sort of event for the rest of the automation to be able to fire off. And so I'm going to show you a list of different trigger events that you can use to trigger your automation. So if you go to create workflow, and then we're going to click start from scratch, and then we are going to add a trigger event. And over here on the right, you can see all of the different options for trigger events that our software gives you. And so a very common one, let's say for this example, would be, let's say a visitor goes to our website. We have a form on our website, and when they submit that form with their name, email, and phone number, we want to trigger off a text message and an email to send out to that new lead, letting them know, hey, we saw you submitted the form on our website, wanted to reach out, somebody will be with you shortly. And so this can be our trigger event, form submitted. And then one thing with trigger events is you need to make sure you're adding the correct filters, because you could have 10 different forms inside of our software that you're using in different places. And maybe you only want this automation to trigger off one of the forms that's on your website. Maybe you have a few different types of forms on your website that people can fill out. And so we need to add a filter so we can specify which form it is that somebody fills out that's going to trigger this automation. And so we're going to click add filter. We're going to select form is. And then over here, we can select from our different forms that we've created. So let's say it's this case study form that's on our website, and this is the one that we want to trigger this automation off of. Then we'd select this one. Make sure you don't select the incorrect one, or else it'll trigger off of an incorrect form. But we'll select this case study form, and then we'll save the trigger. If you don't add the trigger or the filter right here, it will trigger off of every form. So if we don't do this, and let's say you have a generic text and email message that sends out after every form is submitted, that's totally fine. You can leave the filter off. But if you want this automation to only trigger and send a text and an email to somebody that filled out that case study form or that very specific form that you have, then you need to make sure to add those filters there. So we'll go back through, add that again, and we'll save the automation trigger. So now we have our trigger event. We can also rename this one right here. We can say, so we just can see it visually, case study form submitted, and now we can see it on the actual layout of the automation, case study form submitted, so we know that's the trigger of this automation. And then from here, we could add a SMS to send out to this lead, and we could say, hey, and then we could say custom value, contact, first name, so we'll say, hey, John, whatever the person's first name is that they filled in on that form, and then we can type out our message, whatever we want to say to this lead, and save that. So there's a lot of different trigger events that we can use. Like we showed you here, there's like over probably 30, 40 options you can choose from. I'm going to go through a few of the other ones that are pretty common. The next one would be appointment booked. And so it's going to be appointment, customer booked appointment, or appointment status. You can trigger off of either of these. I'm going to do appointment status. And then we also have to use filters to specify which calendar, because we can have many different calendars inside of our software, and you can use a ton of different ones for different employees in your business. And so you need to specify which calendar this automation is being triggered off of when somebody books. And so we need to add that filter, and we need to say in calendar, and then specify which of the two calendars we want this automation to trigger off of. So we could do our business booking calendar. And then for these appointment automations, you also need to select the appointment status is, and then confirmed. We don't want to send the text and the emails out to people who haven't confirmed the appointment. And so we'll select confirmed here. And this will basically send out to everybody who books the appointment, because when they book it, that means they've confirmed it when they hit submit on the booking. And so the event type is normal. There's a couple different options here, but just a normal event. We also have recurring appointments that we can set up in our software that happen like once a week or once a month. So if it's a recurring type of appointment, then you would set that. We'll just do normal for this one, or any would be fine as well. So anytime somebody books on our appointment or our calendar, it'll send this text message to them. You wouldn't want to use both of those different triggers, because that wouldn't really make sense. You just want to use one or the other, either the form submitted or the appointment booked. We would create separate automations, one for this and one for this one where the form is submitted. But I'm just showing you for example's sake of how these triggers work. And we can do one more here really quick. Let's do a customer replied trigger. So if somebody replies to us or sends us a message essentially through text, Facebook Messenger, Instagram DMs, Google My Business, or even an email, we can trigger an automated reply to go back to them. And so we can click add filter right here, and then we can select reply channel, And then we can do it through call, our chat widget, email, Facebook Messenger, Google My Business, Instagram DM, live chat on our website, SMS. So let's say we want to trigger this one off an SMS. So anytime a lead texts us to our number that we have in here inside the software, we can automate this text message to send back to them and just let them know, hey, we got your message. How can we help you? Or we can just start a conversation with them that way. So those are 3 pretty common trigger events that you can use. We can also build courses with our software. And so you can trigger off automations where you get people that have signed up for your courses, somebody who has checked out through your funnel and has purchased one of your products or services. You can trigger off an email to go out to them saying, hey, thanks for your purchase. Here's access to the course that you bought or the product that you purchased from us. If people abandon cart and they don't end up checking out, you can have an automation that'll text them and email them for that kind of stuff. You can trigger pretty much any automation you want. There's endless trigger events inside of our software. So you can play around with these. And if you ever have questions, you can reach out to support and we can help you set these automations up as part of our software package. So I'll see you in the next video.